Hello everybody, my name is CRG. I'm a guy that plays games while being lame, and a little while ago there was a video made by Peebs saying that you are wrong about indie games. I'm here to counter and say no, that is not incorrect. Indie games are underrated a lot of the times. So let's go and talk about that. By the way, before we start, please like the video or just comment your favorite indie game. It helps out the algorithm and helps my channel grow if you like these videos, and if you want to see more, please do. I play games here and I also critique bad reviewers or just bad essay videos about games. So, on with the video.
How many times, when a friend of yours has tried to get you to download an indie game, have they described it as, it's like a AAA game you like from 15 years ago, but worse? As it stands,
Never. This is what we immediately start off with: a straw man. The problem that I have and why I say it's a straw man is because nobody does that. Nobody tries to get you to buy something but say like it's worse. But on top of that, what he considers worse is just not his style. We'll see that later on, but pretty much it is I don't like it, therefore it must be bad, rather than I don't like it because it may not be my niche.
right now, AAA is attempting to please everybody and pleasing nobody, and indie is only pleasing a small handful of people at a time.
Case in point, it kind of proved what I said about the niche.
AAA games no longer take risks with their mechanics or themes and bore the hardcore audience, while indie games tend to be unpolished, obtuse, or otherwise limited in scope. Whenever you
Except the fact that that's not true for a lot of them. The problem that he's talking about is bad video games and conflating them with the entire genre. When it comes to AAA, people are getting tired because you only have a handful and you can evaluate the AAAs over and over again and see a consistent pattern. With indie, there is no pattern because it's not held by like 3 studios. So painting that broad of a stroke for indies is absolutely idiotic, but also sets it up in a poor way to just basically lay groundwork to make a person think a certain way when you're making a video essay. It's actually one of the most common tactics, but if you're smart enough, you can see stuff like that. It's too much of a generalization for most indie games out there because unpolished really does not matter too much in an indie game because they're not necessarily trying to be large games. So even if they're unpolished, you'll still get like 360 frames on them, unless they do something absolutely crappy with like the lighting or whatever. But that's once again like quite rare. Talk about the limited scope though, it's because generally indie games aren't meant to have these large scopes because of the small development team. You go and try to dismiss this saying that, oh, well, that doesn't necessarily matter later on, but it does because if you only have 7 people and there's a couple bugs in the game, it's understandable versus a multi-billion-dollar company that has the resources to never even have that happen. Now, obviously, if a game is fundamentally broken, that's something else, but he doesn't distinguish between that. He pretty much says all indie games, and that's just a straw man.
criticize something AAA, everyone tells you to play indie. Whenever you criticize the indie scene, everyone just says you must be a AAA-loving idiot. I think they both suck. Let's run through some popular indie games real quick. Fortune's Run. It's like
This is how you know it's extremely bad faith because he says, let's run through some popular indie games and then bring one of the most obscure games out there. When we look at the Steam reviews, it only has 530 reviews total, which is not that popular, and it peaked only at 153 like users at a given time. That is not exactly what I would say popular for an indie game. It's good, which means that you at least have 530 like products sold, but it is nowhere near what he's trying to say. And this just means that this video either is so disingenuous that it's just trying to straight up lie to you to paint a different narrative, or this person really doesn't know what they're talking about, which I don't know which one is worse.
Deus Ex mixed with Doom. Cool idea. The developer went to prison and will not be finishing the game anytime soon. $20. Also, big problem. The game isn't fun. Very positive.
This is what happens when a person really takes their opinion super high and doesn't necessarily think that much. They'll just say something and then won't expand upon it. But if you were to press this person, I guarantee you he will not be able to say why the game is not that fun. On top of that, the person was in prison, but they were released early, so that's up in the air of whether or not it's going to get a new update. By the way, actually it is. So pretty much everything that he said fell apart, and he's really the only like thing that he has is it's $20 in early access, which is like a big whoop. That's cheaper than even like big games out there that try to sell you early access for like 60, 70, $80. So I really don't know what this person is on besides just really being genuinely dishonest.
Project Silverfish. It's like Stalker, but made by furries and fucking hideous. Also, has less content. It costs more than Stalker does. Very positive reviews.
Once again, he brings up a pretty obscure indie title and then says it's like one of the more popular ones. It absolutely isn't. There's so many other ones that have way more reviews and way more sales. On top of that, he's hiding information that it's very clearly stated that it is a early access game and that it's going to have more content added later on. Now, whether or not you like that or whether or not you like the early access model is to be debated, but trying to hide it and say, well, it's a game that just has less content and not leave that information in there and deliberately try to ignore that is once again showing that it's a very dishonest video that isn't trying to actually make a point, it's just trying to be a type of self-validation video.
Mouthwashing. It's like David Lynch made something really boring. Basically, no gameplay. Overwhelmingly positive.
This is why I said before that this person pretty much uses like, oh, they don't like it, therefore it must be X, Y, and Z, and that he's trying to act like everybody else is wrong. But if we look at what it is, we can see how dumb what he said really is. It literally says story rich and psychological horror, both things that don't necessarily scream epic gameplay, which is fine if you don't like it, but don't pretend that it's going to be something that it's not and then act, oh, well, it's boring because it doesn't have gameplay. If that is the case, you just didn't know how to read, which then might show that your IQ is subpar and you shouldn't be making this video. Or, like I said, once again, over and over, a dishonest one.
These are indie games that I cherry-picked because they are of notably higher quality than most. Still, whenever I cave and pick up an indie game a friend recommended to me, I am almost always disappointed. For every Terraria or Kenshi or Cruelty Squad game there's 100 terrible wastes of money with passable Steam reviews. Most people, myself included, do not have the patience or the willpower to waste time and money on a game that is most likely going to be shit, or
the problem when he tries to say that is that they aren't shit. It's just a mismatch of, it probably not being towards his liking. He obviously wants more gameplay heavy focused things with a large amount of content. That is going to be more of the AAA scene, though quality is dubious. Most indie games are not going to have that because it's a small team where it's just like $10, $20, something like that, where they're going to be adding stuff more and more, and then that's helping to fund them. He doesn't seem to understand that. He also seems that he can't read either, which then makes him in this mindset of, oh, I expect X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no, if you read, you would know what to expect. But I guess we don't want to read.
Of quality in those sorts of games. Not so with indie games, where failure is the rule and not the exception. It's way more interesting to talk about a AAA game that failed because that's somewhat surprising. Less so these days, though. I mean, look at Highguard. That's shocking, that a game with that budget failed so quickly. But if I talked about indie games that sucked or failed on launch, nobody would care because that's kind of to be expected.
I really don't know what he's trying to do, but yeah, Captain Obvious, a game with a multi-million-dollar budget should not really fail because it doesn't really make sense because you have everything that should go right for you. A person making an indie game doesn't really have anything. They have to go make deals. They have to go and do a lot of stuff on their own. If they get a publisher involved, they have to give up certain rights and royalties and percentages and so on and so forth. Like, yeah, no duh. Like, why are we even bringing this up?
Instead, I would gladly make a video about a great indie game that has flown under the radar, like Felvedek, the one in the background right now. But those are far fewer and further between than the indie crowd would have you believe.
No, that's incorrect. That's a bold-faced lie. He's just trying to assert something that doesn't actually work. There's a reason why the indie game scene is flourishing. One of the biggest parts of it is indie game horror, because horror sells like really, really well. But then you also have other things where you have things like Deep Rock, Mouse PI, Hollow Knight. You have even fan games like Brick Bears, so on and so forth.
I know someone's going to say, well, then you just don't like video games then. Yeah, maybe. Or maybe I just have taste and value my time.
And this is how you can tell that this person is a pompous person that doesn't actually have any opinions worth of value, where he just says, oh, I have taste and value my time. It's like, no, you don't. You brought up things and then you didn't actually explain them and you just said that they're boring. But you can't read to understand, like, maybe this game is not something that I would like. There's many games that I don't like Path of Exile 2 is not my type of game, but my brother wanted me to play it, so he bought it for me. And then I supplemented my time of enjoyment playing it by just spending time with my brother. I would have never done that in the first place if he didn't buy it for me. Those are two different things. I would never go talk about Path of Exile 2 or 1 because those are games that I don't like and would never play on my own. Problem here is that he doesn't understand that, and so he has to say these games are boring, these games are bad, these games are trash, when it's really not that. It's just that your taste is just completely different than what the indie scene is offering right now.
That the furry slop dog shit with no polish was only made by two dudes who were freezing to death in Siberia over the course of 20 years does not in any way make the experience of playing it more fun. That is the justification I typically see whenever I tell someone I'm not interested in an indie game, or that there's not enough stuff there for me to want to spend money on it. Oh,
This is one of the only points that he brings up that actually has any form of substance really imaginable, because like I said, most of what he brought up, the lie or cutting out information. But this is an actual good point of saying that I'd rather not spend $20, $30 on a game that I don't know the quality of, that's still in early access, so it doesn't have that much content. Hell, I've been very reserved about that as well, and only once they start reaching around like their like point 0.6 like like gameplay do I really like spend money like that. Then there's also the things of that, like, well, the person may abandon it, which is what he alluded to before with the other person getting arrested or just might drop the project completely, so on and so forth. These things are actual concerns and these things are actual criticisms that he can bring up, but the problem is that he doesn't necessarily go any deeper. So you had one good point out of however many he actually brought up.
it's funny to me that people who are die-hard into indie games laugh at the AAA scene for its emphasis on graphical fidelity. They're right to do that, of course, but they will do the exact same thing with indie games, only in the opposite direction. The better an indie game can replicate an archaic aesthetic or look like this, it is subject to the same undue praise as any AAA game is for having fully rendered water molecules, mechanics be damned.
It's just a straight lie that we can go and really just see with two games. I'm going to bring up a pretty popular one, Phasmophobia. Its update was kind of doo-doo. It didn't really bring that much. It looks like it went backwards and it was multiple years in development. And even while it was a small team, like people still criticized them heavily. So when he tries to say like, oh, people give excuses for them, it's people give excuses for quality when it comes to like bugginess and stuff like that. We have another game called Mannequin Syndrome. It has mixed reviews because while it looks cool, it's just boring. So what he says is just straight up incorrect. So I don't know where he gets this, but he's just puffing out a bold-faced lie.
Only indie crew that I consistently see putting out good stuff is New Blood. They've genuinely never missed, but I guess you could hardly call them indie at this point. They're a publishing house with deep pockets. The indie label doesn't really make any sense in itself anymore. How do you define what a big publisher is?
That's actually a good question, but doesn't necessarily matter to the video, so we're just going to go away from that.
The only people I know personally, keyword, personally, that are really into indie games are either game developers themselves, true enthusiasts with a high tolerance for having their time wasted, YouTubers who make money from reviewing indie games, or total neats that just watch YouTube all day and then play the games recommended by the YouTubers.
So he brings up a bunch of people that he doesn't know personally to say these are people that I know personally. Yeah, no, what you're doing is that you're trying to make a generalization to make the position seem worse. I would let this point go if he actually had something of substance because then he can go try to defend it, but he can't. Like I said, it's just a crappy internet debate tactic so that he can make a hit piece video on indie games rather than actually talking about indie games in general. Like I said, it just seems really bad faith, especially with how he has not really brought up a single point, cut out information, and then never really expands on his points.
It's also part of the problem. You can't trust the reviews because people will instantaneously give positive reviews to a game that they watch somebody else play. There is an entire shadow economy of lonely people that use the internet as a replacement for social interaction.
What in the conspiracy theory dismissal is this? You can't trust the reviews because I say so, because I made a random assertion. Yes, that may happen, but also people don't necessarily want to play crap. Like he tries to assert that people like wasting their time, but really that's like nobody likes that.
And they remember the validation and parasocial friendship they felt watching someone else play a game as being enjoyment of the game itself. So
I think we need to stop people from really making assertions when they're not that smart. Because then we get stuff like this. It pains me. It really does. Maybe I should go build a hospital and round people up like this.
So many well-regarded indie games are just as, if not more, of a shameless cash grab than the AAA stuff. There is so much gimmicky streamer bait that is designed around being clickbaity or eye-catching enough to get influencers to play it for 1 or 2 sessions, get their audience to buy it, and then forget about it.
Great, you're gonna back it up. Oh wait, no, he's gonna bring in just crappy examples that don't actually show his point.
Case in point, every slop horror game ever. People will see shit like this and go, yeah, that looks great.
I don't necessarily think trying to bring up Poppy Playtime is the best example. You would do something like Garden of Bonbon, which shows that he doesn't necessarily know anything of the indie scene at all. Even though that Poppy Playtime isn't necessarily the greatest in quality, calling it slop is very, very, very far from what it actually is. Because you actually have writers, you have programmers, developers, art directors, so on and so forth. Like, that is not slop. Slop is things like Garden of Bonbon, where it's made by 2 people that can pump and dump like 7 games in a year. Taking a whole year to like actually make a game, make a chapter, is not necessarily what I would call slop, especially when you have your team running at full mass. Whatever the quality may be, crap is different than slop. So yeah, I really don't know what this dude is thinking when making this video, because it's very clear that he's not educated enough in the indie scene at all.
This is no dunking on Iron Lung here either, but the fact that a YouTuber can then go make a movie about a 45-minute long horror game and have it outsell Hollywood, the quality of the movie, regardless, right, just shows you the amount of influence these people exert over the popularity of these games and the public perception of them. That's
Yes, but you brought up nothing. Like, somebody like Markiplier, the person that he brought up, absolutely crapped on Poppy Playtime. He hated it. He hated the last chapter. I hated the last chapter. So many people hated the last chapter. So many people hated the chapter before it. And so on and so forth. The idea of like, oh, well, the popularity only comes from YouTubers, and if you didn't have that, it would still be crap, is absolutely a dumb assertion that doesn't make any sense. It's, once again, very conspiracy theory-ist level things where it's like the government's controlling you, therefore you can't use Google to prove me wrong.
how people are finding indie games is through these YouTubers. Most normal people don't trawl through the Steam catalog to find a game with 300 reviews that may or may not be fun for 3 to 6 hours in exchange for $20.
No, but Steam does actually push indie games with sales and stuff like that, and which sometimes I'll find indie games like that, but I really haven't seen a person play an indie game in a while because I don't want to be spoiled. Pops up and so on and so forth, and it won't be $20, and then you buy it, and then people might buy it at full price later on, and so on and so forth. I don't necessarily think that this person knows how other people find indie games, because I don't find indie games like that. And especially with the push of people to just find indie games, people will go through like the Steam catalog because it'll just give you random stuff a lot of the time. Like, they're not that hard to find. You just go into Steam, you select a category, and then you select new, and then you can just look at them. They're also not that expensive most of the time. Like, a lot of them are priced around the $5 to $10 range. The upper ones can get into 20 or 30, but that's generally going to be more ambitious projects that you have to decide whether or not you're going to take. I don't know what, like, reality he's living in. They're not hard to find.
Most of them do not want to spend $30 on a Metroidvania-style game, even if it is good. Really, it reminds me of the nerdier aspects of jazz. Certain jazz fans will say, that bass is really creamy, and it is by far the worst excuse for music you've ever heard in your entire life. That's how I feel when someone tells me about how much I will love the hottest new indie rape simulator made in RPG Maker. That's real.
Except it's not. He brings up Fear and Hunger, which it just shows that he's an absolute moron because he can't even properly describe the game. Yes, it does have rape, but it's one of the games that is supposed to be gritty and dark. And this is where we get into, once again, something that I brought up is that I don't like it or it's not my niche, therefore it is bad. And this is pretty much where the rest of the video kind of like just takes that turn.
Most story-driven indie games basically go, everything good is bad, everything bad is good, and then you get kicked back to the main menu and they spit on you for spending money. The ever-present trend of fucked up miserable people writing fucked up miserable stories persists. If you can't see that, I don't know what to tell you.
Except the fact that every single example that he brought up, like mouthwashing and fear and hunger, doesn't actually do that. So I don't know what he's trying to say because none of them say anything of everything bad is good and everything good is bad. And I don't know what this conspiracy level thinking is of where it's like, oh, if you don't see that, I don't know what to tell you. It's because you didn't bring up anything. You're making up stuff. There's a problem here. Here's the weird thing as well, the people making these stories aren't fucked up. If you look at the Berserk writer, he's like probably one of the most normal people. The same thing as Attack on Titan, like he's just a normal person. Then you look at the people making the most fun things in the world, like, Studio Ghibli, and you see Miyazaki just as a sad, sad man.
If you don't like having your soul tormented, you just don't enjoy games then. These sorts of things remind me of those film dudes that are deeply unnerving and every movie they recommend to you deals with some sort of horrific, sexually deviant subplot. Anybody who's ever hung around film people will know exactly what I'm talking about. There's one in every group. Certain people love being transgressive for transgression's sake, and no thanks, I'm normal.
I wouldn't consider a person that can't read and can't even take in information properly and has to lie exactly normal, but okay.
A lot of these indie games have a fixation with the whole emotionally scarring equals deep thing. I really do not know what the rape child subplot in mouthwashing ads, aside from getting people to talk about how fucked up it is.
It's just a different story. That's literally it. Berserk has like one of those. Like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, this is why I said that the video takes a weird turn where he just rants about a niche that he doesn't necessarily like and then tries to go off and pretend like it's actually something. I'm gonna end the criticism off right here because pretty much the rest of it is absolute gobbledygook that kind of goes into the same formula over and over again, where it's just like, I say something, I don't support it, and I just use my opinions, and then I try to say stuff and a bunch of assertions that I don't support once again. It's just really bad. This is something that I don't necessarily like with like people that try to make video essays and reviews. When you have to lie or cut information out, it's not necessarily something great. So are indie games overrated? Maybe, depends on how you do it, but how he tries to back it up, no. None of what he says is true. None of what he says is anywhere near correct, and a lot of it just boils down to that he doesn't like cosmic horror, psychological horror stuff. Therefore, it's bad and it's creepy, and that everybody else is not normal. Like, no, I wouldn't. Like I said, I wouldn't consider somebody that can't read and can't take information and get information from point A to point B that normal either. I would consider you subpar in terms of human intelligence, and not in a way that's pompous, but in a way of that you have actually shown that. But anyway, my name is TRG. I'm just a guy that plays games while being lame, just a random guy. Stay smart, be humble, don't be like this person. Bye bye.